Let me tell you something that every man needs to internalize right now, something that will save you years of emotional devastation, divorce court, and the systemic humiliation of infidelity. You might be dating a woman who is fundamentally incapable of long-term fidelity, and you will not see it if you are looking through the lens of short-term attraction and the fantasy of what she could become. The truth is, the propensity for cheating, the psychological framework required to justify betrayal, is usually fully formed long before she ever accepts your ring. Infidelity is not an accident that happens on a random Tuesday night. We are not talking about judging her character based on vague feelings. We are talking about pattern recognition, risk analysis, and understanding the core mechanics of female psychology that determine whether a woman values stability or whether she prioritizes stimulation. You cannot build a stable future on a foundation built on instability. That is the core premise we must accept. This is the ultimate male hubris, and it is almost always punished by betrayal. Before you commit your resources, your emotional energy, and your legal future to a woman, you have an obligation to yourself to perform a brutal, surgical analysis of her psychological landscape and her historical track record. This is not about suspicion. This is about objective evaluation of risk factors. There are 5 specific, undeniable indicators rooted in female psychology that signal a high probability of future infidelity, often masked by charm, affection, or a performance of the perfect partner. We are going to expose them, one by excruciating one, because recognizing these signs is the only defense you have against a life-altering mistake. This is a deep dive into the mechanisms that erode pair bonding capacity and predispose a woman to seek external validation and stimulation once the novelty of your relationship wears off. The root cause is the inability to regulate internal dissatisfaction and the established pattern of escaping discomfort rather than resolving it. Before we dive into these critical indicators, I want to establish where this conversation is landing. We are sharing a truth that is universally resisted. Tell me right now, in the comments below, what city are you recognizing these truths from? The foundation of a woman who is highly likely to cheat rests on the erosion of her pair bonding capacity. This is not a moral judgment. This is a statement of neurological and emotional wiring. When a woman has an extensive history of high relationship churn, serial dating, or promiscuity, her brain has been fundamentally trained in the comparison economy. Her dopamine pathways fire in response to newness, to external validation, and to the thrill of being pursued. This is the first critical sign. This is the hardest conversation, but it is the most necessary. Her past is the strongest predictor of her future, especially concerning relationships. You must understand that every failed relationship, every casual encounter, every short-term pairing chips away at the neurological and emotional infrastructure required for long-term commitment. A brain is wired to constantly scan the horizon for a perceived upgrade. Even when you are providing stability, security, and partnership, her internal mechanism, trained over years of serial dating, reminds her that a fleeting burst of dopamine is only an app swipe away. She has only learned to run toward the excitement of the new. The man she cheated on in the past likely thought, just like you, that his commitment would be the factor that stabilized her. Commitment only provides the security she requires to feel safe, while she continues her lifelong chase for stimulation. Look closely at her relationship timelines. Did they end abruptly without significant visible cause? Did she move seamlessly from one man to the next, with little to no emotional downtime? This fear, paradoxically, makes her a terrible partner, because she commits out of desperation for external structure, not genuine desire for you. Furthermore, an extensive history often correlates with an entitlement complex. She has received abundant attention, validation, and resources simply for existing during her peak marketability phase. When she commits to you, she often expects the stability you provide. plus the endless external validation she previously received from the broader dating market. She doesn't see this as an unrealistic expectation. She sees this as your failure. This sense of deprivation is the psychological fertile ground for betrayal. The man who overlooks this history is committing the gravest error of all, assuming that the absence of physical fidelity during the courtship phase means the capacity for fidelity is present. You are mistaking temporary transactional behavior for permanent character structure. Once that asset is secured, the psychological patterns she developed in her 20s and early 30s, the need for novelty, the comparison disease, the avoidance of emotional depth, will reassert themselves. This leads us directly to the second sign, which is the necessary prerequisite for rationalizing infidelity. A woman who has cheated in the past, or who has been a destabilizing force in her previous relationships, must construct a believable narrative to avoid facing her own destructive patterns. Instead, the high-risk candidate for infidelity adopts a victim narrative. Listen very carefully to how she describes her ex-partners and her past relationships. Does she consistently frame herself as the passive recipient of bad luck and terrible men? This lack of self-awareness and refusal to own her contribution to the collapse of multiple relationships is a massive red flag. But in her psychology, blaming external factors is necessary because it absolves her of guilt and preserves her self-image as a good person who just happened to meet bad luck repeatedly. This narrative is crucial because it is the exact same psychological mechanism she will activate when she cheats on you. A woman who cannot articulate the precise, specific ways in which she failed her previous partners and what she has learned about her own personal flaws is simply waiting for the next opportunity to shift blame. You are being warned. Her inability to take responsibility for history means she is psychologically unprepared to handle the inevitable conflicts and boredom that occur in a long-term marriage. If she tells you a story of relationship after relationship where she was the victim, where she was used or taken advantage of, you are not listening to a tragic history. You are listening to a blueprint for future conflict. This pattern is often solidified by what we call emotional health avoidance. Many high-risk women spend years avoiding deep therapy or genuine self-reflection because confronting their own history means confronting their destructive choices. They might engage in surface-level self-help or talk vaguely about personal growth, but when you press them gently on concrete historical examples of where they were wrong, they become immediately defensive, emotionally volatile, or they shut down the conversation entirely. This defensiveness is not shame. It is active protection of the victim narrative that maintains their psychological stability. And you, the committed man, will eventually become the next villain in that constantly recycling story. This projection is relentless, and it is the single most toxic ingredient in a marriage doomed to infidelity. The man who commits to a woman who refuses accountability is committing to a future where he will always be the reason for her bad decisions. They tell you that you are not dealing with a woman who has learned from her mistakes. You are dealing with a woman whose core operating system is built on prioritizing self-preservation and emotional stimulation over loyalty and stability. We have only just begun to scratch the surface of the 5 critical signs. The remaining 3 indicators are behavioral tells that show up in the courtship phase itself, revealing her instability and her continuing search for options, even while she is supposedly committing to you. These signs are often subtle, easily overlooked by a man blinded by attraction, but they are absolutely essential for your protection. We are establishing a serious community here, built on uncomfortable but necessary truths. If the truths discussed here resonate deeply with the patterns you have observed in your own dating life, I want you to signal that clarity. In the comments section right now, drop the phrase, "Pattern confirmed." Let that be the signal that you are choosing awareness over wishful thinking. Hit the like button immediately to amplify this message and ensure that more men can find this protection. You cannot afford to miss the next broadcast. Keep your notification bell activated because the truth that saves your future is arriving soon. The ultimate cost of commitment is not financial. When we talked about the "I'm ready now" phase, we established that many women enter commitment not out of genuine desire for a specific stable partner, but out of necessity, a strategic retreat from the demographic reality that their options have dwindled and their biological clock is deafening. But that transition doesn't erase the underlying psychology, it only masks it. I am talking about the 5 definitive behavioral patterns that signal a woman is psychologically predisposed to cheat, regardless of how stable or committed you are. Pay close attention to these signals, because they are not flaws, they are character indicators. And recognizing them now prevents years of deep, corrosive pain later. Before we dive into these critical final patterns, I want to know who is listening and where you are navigating these complex dynamics. Knowing this truth transcends borders, and your awareness is the first step toward protection. The reality is that cheating is rarely an accident. The woman who will cheat operates from a framework of entitlement and emotional deficit. She views the relationship as transactional, meaning your purpose is to meet her needs, and if you fail to meet even one category of those needs, whether it's excitement, validation, or emotional novelty, she is psychologically free to outsource that need to another man. This isn't just theory. This is the predictable outcome of specific behavioral precursors. Here is the definitive list of 5 signs that give away a woman who is predisposed to infidelity before you ever commit to her. You see this manifest most clearly in her relationship with social media and the men she keeps in her orbit. Her self-worth is not generated internally. It is crowdsourced through likes, comments, and external male attention. The key here is the need for volume of attention, not just quality. You, the committed partner, provide stability and resources, but you cannot provide the constant, novel emotional hit she gets from a stream of strangers and acquaintances. Look closely at her friends. Does she maintain a roster of former flames, male co-workers who text too late, or guys who perpetually compliment her on her posts? These are not friendships. These are orbiters. A genuinely committed woman clears her perimeter. She respects the sanctity of the relationship boundary. A woman who insists on keeping these orbiters active is subconsciously keeping the door open. When conflict arises in your relationship, or when she feels momentarily bored, her natural reflex will be to turn to the readily available validation from her orbiters. Infidelity is simply the physical culmination of that already existing emotional relationship she maintains with her fan base. No one cheats thinking, "I am a bad person doing a bad thing." They cheat thinking, "I am owed this," or "my partner made me do this." This chronic lack of accountability is the bedrock of infidelity psychology. You can spot it long before commitment. Listen to how she describes her past relationships, especially why they ended. Does she acknowledge her mistakes, her lack of emotional regulation, or her poor choices in partners? Or is every ex-boyfriend framed as a monster, an abuser, or simply terrible luck? In the context of marriage, this means that if she becomes unhappy, frustrated, or bored, the blame will automatically land on you. You will be held responsible for her emotional state. When she finds external attention, her internal dialogue will be, "He isn't meeting my needs. Therefore, I am justified in finding someone who does." This refusal to take responsibility for her own emotional well-being is a direct predictor that she will outsource her happiness, and subsequently, her physical needs, to the next available option the moment you experience a normal relationship setback. Trust requires transparency, not secrecy. The woman who is practicing for infidelity lives a compartmentalized life. But the most obvious and unavoidable tell is her relationship with her phone. The phone is the operational center for modern infidelity. A person with nothing to hide does not act like they have everything to hide. The level of defensive secrecy around her digital life is directly proportional to the information she is actively concealing. If she practices secrecy now, protecting her past communication history or her current conversations with male orbiters, she is already developing the muscle memory necessary for concealing a secret relationship within your committed one. Furthermore, watch for her sudden and dramatic shift in scheduled communication. Does she suddenly start having late nights, business dinners that are loosely defined, or weekend trips with friends you've never met? She is seeing what she can get away with. Commitment means integrating lives. Compartmentalization means preparing for dual living. This sign speaks to the core personality structure. The trait of conscientiousness involves being careful, diligent, reliable, and prioritizing long-term goals over immediate gratification. They thrive on novelty and excitement. The future cheater often has a high need for novelty, the dopamine hit of something new, exciting, and slightly risky. If her history is a carousel of impulsive career changes, short-lived hobbies, dramatic friendships, and frequent geographical moves, she demonstrates a low capacity to tolerate the inevitable boredom of long-term commitment. Marriage, by its very nature, is a commitment to stability and predictability. It is the antithesis of novelty. She will view your reliability not as a strength, but as a dull cage. Her impulsivity, which you might initially find charming or free-spirited, is the very trait that guarantees she will make a rash, emotionally driven decision, like engaging in an affair, the moment the high-stakes excitement of the new relationship disappears. You cannot compete with the thrill of the forbidden. Her character is already calibrated to seek it out when the going gets routine. The woman who will cheat often treats intimacy and affection as commodities to be traded, not gifts to be shared. True, sustainable fidelity is rooted in emotional generosity and genuine, specific desire for the partner. Look at her behavior during conflict. This pattern reveals that her physical connection is not a bond. It's leverage. When the relationship becomes difficult, or when she feels that her emotional or material needs are not being met precisely as she demands, she will not use honest communication to resolve the issue. And when intimacy becomes a cold, calculated performance, or is entirely absent, it creates a vacuum. She is psychologically preparing herself for the emotional and physical justification of seeking that intimacy elsewhere, because you have been demoted from partner to provider. You must internalize this truth. These 5 patterns are not things you can fix with love, patience, or commitment. They are the established psychological and behavioral wiring that define her character. When a woman possesses these traits, the dependency on external validation, the lack of accountability, aggressive secrecy, the need for novelty, and the transactional use of intimacy, she is already prepared for infidelity. She is simply waiting for the right blend of opportunity and relationship friction to activate the program. If you commit to this person, you are not signing up for a partnership. You are signing up for a high-risk liability. You deserve a partnership built on mutual respect and unbreakable trust, not one built on performance and perpetual vigilance. The goal is to move from passive hope to active, informed decision-making. Your responsibility now is simple. Act on the data. Do not allow loneliness or the fear of starting over to blind you to these signs. I know this material is intense, but the clarity you gain from this uncomfortable truth is absolutely priceless. You deserve to walk away from these high-risk scenarios, feeling protected and strong. Let us build a community of men who prioritize self-respect and pattern recognition over wishful thinking. This channel exists to provide you with the unfiltered truth that changes the trajectory of your life. We are building the knowledge base that mainstream culture actively attempts to suppress, and you need to be part of this community. And you definitely need to be ready for the next one. You absolutely do not want to miss the next crucial installment. Stay sharp, stay informed, and commit only when the evidence supports the promise.